The following interview segment was taken from Talking Wealth on flix.net. That's FLIXX.net. Talking Wealth is brought to you by Wealth Within and presented by Dale Gillham and Janine Cox. To watch the full episode, go to flix.net, click on the On Demand section, and then click on Talking Wealth under the Finance section. Or for more information, visit wealthwithin.com.au. Eric Brotman, welcome back to Talking Wealth. How are you today?
Dale, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back.
Now, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Now, remember our last chat, we spoke about setting your financial goals for 2022, and I was absolutely jam-packed full of great hints and tips for everybody. But I know today, I think we're going to blow some myths away today with what we're going to talk about, as I believe we're chatting about salaries and creating wealth.
Yeah, there's a great misconception that income and wealth are the same. They're not. And you know, in the States here, we see surveys, and it's always about the richest states or the richest cities or the richest, and it's always about their income. And income that to me is absolutely silly, because making a lot of money and building wealth, while it helps to make a lot of money if you want to build wealth, it still requires behavior. And you still have to consider the impact of taxation, and in some cases, the way people spend. I mean, you know, a fish grows to its environment, whether it's in a small fish bowl or a big aquarium.
Yeah.
Well, when people, their salaries go up from the fish bowl to the aquarium, they tend to spend in their new environment. They upgrade their homes or their cars or their vacations or their lifestyle. And so I think I've met a lot of very wealthy people who have what I would consider a modest income. And I've met people who have incomes that I could only dream of personally who don't have wealth. And it's just because of behavior.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, I've had numerous people. I used to see like 80 people around my little round table in my office years ago, 20 odd years ago, talking about financial management and budgeting. And I've had surgeons, really high paid surgeons who are earning $500,000 to $1 million a year. And, they're close to 60, and they look me in the eye and say, Dale, I can't afford to retire. I go, why not? And they go, because of my wife and my spending and my kids and all the stuff that we have to fund. He said, I can't retire. And he'd been working all his life. And I've had pilots, like 30-year veteran international pilots getting paid hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. But when you wrote down their financial net worth, they were negative and going out the back door and almost bankrupt. And I've had numerous of those. So it doesn't necessarily translate having a high salary to being wealthy. It's more of, as you said, it's very much creating those right mindset and obviously the great habits that people need to have.
Well, and it starts when you earn your first paycheck. We do a whole lot of work in our office trying to teach financial literacy, and we do courses, and we try to work with folks who are just entering. They're just out of university. They're trying to enter the workforce, and we're trying to get them to start making good habits right away, whether it's paying off student debt, which can be a problem, whether it's making good housing decisions, whether it's setting a basic budget, whether it's determining how to take advantage of their employee benefits and whatever employer matches exist. But starting early is a giant first step. And, what you have to do if you're 40 when you start saving money, it's not that it's impossible. It's that it's much harder to start at 40 than it is at 25.
Yep.
And even harder when you talk about that surgeon who's 60 and says, I can't afford to retire. To me, that's tragic. And it's also common, really common. So many people spend what they make. And, the biggest factor, and I mentioned behavior, but really the biggest factor, if you were to look at an equation that's regarding wealth building, and we just did math, the factor that has the most impact is time, because in the equation, that's the exponent. That's the number that's going to make the biggest difference is going to be time. It's not necessarily rate of return. Certainly, there's lots of ways to look at that between gross rates or net rates or real rates or what's inflation, so forth. But it's time. And if you have 30 or 40 years to compound and you're able to almost religiously put away money on a regular basis, wealth building is not difficult.
No.
If you don't do that, wealth building is almost impossible.
Yeah, look, it is. It's, the journey, between today and where you're going to end up is, going to be paved with so many steps, but you still keep having to walk it. And all too often people think that they're just going to hit a button, in this magic button, and all of a sudden they've got all this money when they get close to retirement, without actually taking those steps that you're talking about. And it's really important that we get into those habits really, really early. The earlier the better, because it just makes it so much easier. It's almost like exercise, you know. You don't want to do it, but then when you get doing it, you start getting into that rhythm, and then it's just normal for you. But it is interesting when I talk to people like who have had huge wages and they're really in trouble. It's interesting how more of them get caught in things, and I'll use the word scams, but I'm talking about dubious investment schemes or things like tax planning investment schemes that may be, you know, really high risk, etc. And I think because they believe they're super intelligent, they're getting paid a lot of money, then maybe they don't do the work that's necessary to really assess the actual investment as well. And I find that's quite common with people getting high incomes, but I find people on lower incomes have a much better propensity for growing their wealth because they're not trying to keep up with the Joneses, and they're checking out everything, you know, and making sure they're investing their money the right way because they can't afford to lose it, so to speak.
Well, one of the reasons why the Bernie Madoffs of the world and why hedge funds for so long, these black boxes, were able to sort of lure in the high net worth and high income folks was this idea that it was some private exclusive club.
Yep.
That always makes me uncomfortable. The idea that you have to have a special membership card to get into this particular deal usually is a cause to run from said deal. That, in my estimation, you're right. The folks who might have a more modest income, but who are just using, whether it's basic funds or basic strategies or you know, things that are really not so esoteric, not so otherworldly, it makes sense. And there is a lot of there's a lot of keeping up with the Joneses, not only on the spending side. I mean, we talk all the time about everybody needs to have the next bigger house or fancier car or new iPhone or whatever it is. But there's also the same thing on the saving side, on the investing side. You know, there was a brokerage called EF Hutton years and years ago in the States, and their ad campaign, and this was in the 1970s, and I remember it well because the ad campaign used to say, "When EF Hutton talks, people listen," as if it was some secret. They're no longer around. Maybe it's because it was a secret. I don't know. But I do know that that was the messaging, was like, this is something like, we've got some information that you don't have. That really doesn't exist anymore. I mean, information, not only because public companies have to disclose everything, but because markets are so unbelievably efficient. You're not gonna fool somebody at this stage of the game. It's better to just stick to the fundamentals. And you know, you mentioned, Dale, you mentioned exercise. The path to health and the path to wealth are very similar. It is much easier to stay healthy than to get healthy. It's also much easier to stay wealthy than to get wealthy. And they're very, very similar because they require a lot of push-ups and sit-ups you don't always want to do. But doing them every day makes a difference. And it's one of the reasons why, you know, as a CFP practitioner, it's one of the reasons why I make a living, is because people realize, in the same way that they can go to the gym by themselves or they can hire a trainer, you can manage money by yourself. None of it is beyond, I mean, between robo advisors and online data and all those things, you can do this yourself. Most people either don't, or they need an accountability partner, which is why financial advisors who are, you know, quality financial advisors who are giving good, solid, objective advice, I think are priceless, because that's the accountability partner you need to make good decisions.
Yeah, and I know I come across this a lot because I'm not a financial advisor like yourself. I'm not a certified financial planner. I don't have any financial planning qualifications, but I am licensed to give advice on stocks. So personal advice is not what I do. I give more what they call general advice here in Australia. So and I get so many people saying, "Oh, I don't want to use a financial advisor. They cost money and blah blah blah." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. So what's the cost of not using one?" And they go to me, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, the cost of not using one is you're going to get caught in the next crash. You're going to do this, 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 and this." And they go, "Oh," and they don't think about that. And to me, there's value, you know, obviously, yes, you can do it yourself, but the value is, as you said, there's accountability there by having somebody else. So And the financial advisor's role is to add value to what they might not be able to do for themselves, and
Right.
make sure they're focused on the future, make sure they're planning to build up and managing their debt and managing their investments and their savings and making sure they're structured the right way so they're minimizing their tax but maximizing the gain within their risk profiles. And a lot of people don't understand that. And I think the value of having a great advisor is just, to me, is just paramount to most people. It's a shame that a lot of people don't use them.
No, a lot of people don't, and it's one of the things that's interesting, at least in the U.S., is that the average financial advisor is almost 60 years old.
Oh,
There is no career path here in a lot of places. There's no degree path. If you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant, there's a degree path. You know exactly what you need to do. To be a financial advisor, while there are accreditations and there's certainly licensure and so forth, there is no obvious career path. And so young people are not attracted to this path. And frankly, for many, many years, the big brokerage firms, the big insurance companies, the big banks sort of chewed them up and spit them out. And it was an awful job. And so it really did a lot of damage.
yes.
Um, it's a tough industry to crack into. And now that it's getting the regulatory environment's gotten very, very heavy here. And I know that's no surprise to you. You guys have it, I think, a little worse than we
Yep.
do. But that environment's gotten so difficult and the compliance has gotten so onerous that it's also incredibly expensive to get into this business. So
Yes.
now, not only is there no obvious career track, it also has a big barrier to entry.
Mm.
And so we have a shortage in the States and a growing need for it. So I can think of no better career path at this stage than finding a mentor or somebody who can help you get into this industry if it's something you want to do. I can think of no better time ever than right now.
Look, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, it's probably a little bit different in Australia because our regulatory body have said you've got to have a degree qualification to be basically a certified financial planner here in Australia. So it's gone from a sort of diploma level or vocational level through to degree level now. So some sort of business investing degree, and then obviously other sort of compliance qualifications as well. And it has changed. It was exactly the same as what you were talking about. A lot more older people, no younger people. We're getting a lot more younger people coming through now because it's a degree qualification. So we've changed a little bit. And you are right. We have heavier regulation than you. And I'd certainly know that because I'm a responsible manager for a license, an SEC license here in Australia. So I do know the compliance that we do have.
Oh, man. Yes, you guys have it so bad that we're not allowed to complain here anymore.
Correct. Don't complain to me. I'm not going to listen to you, mate. I really am not.
Right. No, we look at you guys and say, wow, we really have it easy over here. So
yeah, but you are right. It does put the cost of financial advice up, because obviously the compliance costs and everything else. But again, it doesn't discount the actual importance of using a real quality financial advisor, especially, and to me, it doesn't matter whether you don't have much money or whether you're on a high income. To me, high income people need it the most because they tend to make decisions thinking because, as I said, they think they're more intelligent or better than other people, that they're not going to get scammed or whatever else. And I think they need to plan more. But even people on lower incomes, and they think, oh, it may not be worth it. The key, I think you said earlier, was time. And if you start off early with a good financial advisor and you go on a plan with them and you have your savings going in and you're working with them on investment, and you do that over 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you will never be disappointed in the results you're going to get. You will achieve the results that you want and you will be able to retire on a pretty comfortable income. And that would be that's my take on what financial planners and what they can add to people.
I think that's true. And I agree with you that everyone at every end of the spectrum can benefit from financial advice. There's no question. I do think that at the higher income levels, that advice has to be more technically sound. It has to be more tax savvy. It has to be more estate savvy. There are layers of complexity that occur at that point. And quite frankly, the value of a dollar is not the same if you make $1 million a year versus $50,000 a year. It's not the same dollar because at the $1 million level, you might be losing almost half of it to the government. Whereas if you're at 50,000, you might not be paying anything in taxes, or certainly not much. So there is a dramatic difference in terms of what high income folks need. But you're right. A lot of high income people, particularly doctors, we represent lots of physicians, and I'm going to tease them a little right now for anyone who checks this out. But doctors are generally some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life.
Yes.
But they're not smart at everything.
Hmm.
And in the same way I wouldn't remove my own appendix, they should probably not try and do some of this themselves just because they're very bright. And that creates all kinds of interesting, there's behavioral finance studies about that, the overconfidence bias and some of the different things that people feel like just because I'm very bright and I know neuroscience, I must therefore be a savvy money manager. And they really are completely different skills.
Yeah, there's obviously the Dunning-Kruger effect, with the cognitive bias, that they talk about. People do that. And so you are so right. And in the end of the day, again, I wouldn't take my own appendix out, but, I'd go to a doctor to do that. But it's also about, to me, that's an emotional attachment. It's your money. And if you're trying to invest it yourself, and one of the things I often say just before we finish up today's chat, I often say to people who want to trade the stock market and they're trading it on their own, watching YouTube videos thinking they're doing really well with this, and they've got this cognitive bias. And I said, would you give all your money to somebody with the same knowledge and education as you and experience in the stock market to trade all your money for you? And they went, hell no. And I go, so why are you doing it? Why don't you learn?
Oh yeah, that's excellent.
So, and it's really that sort of case. And that's why, again, you need somebody who knows what they're doing at your level. And I know some people do outgrow their advisor and move on to somebody who's a lot more specialized in certain areas, which is what you're talking about. But I think the takeaway from today's chat is really that it doesn't matter what income level you're on, you can create wealth. Whether you think you're not making very much and you can't do it, you can. You very, very much can. So, and it's just changing those habits. Any last words you want to say to everybody before we go?
The only thing I'd say is that if you haven't started doing this, don't wait, because that the impact of time, literally every day, every week, every month that passes is affecting you exponentially, and it's really important at whatever stage and whatever age you are. Now's the time, because there are so many pitfalls out there, and you don't want to be 60 or 65 and feeling like you're going to die at your desk. That is, I think that is a fate worse than death. I don't think retirement in and of itself, and Dale, we've talked so many times, I don't believe in the typical traditional retirement that you go from 50 or 60 or 70 hours a week to daytime television with your feet up. I think it's important to stay active and involved.
Me too.
But to be working because you love it is completely different than to feel like you have no choice.
Yeah.
And so financial planning and investing and behavior and accountability and starting early, they give you choices. They allow you to not only age with dignity and hopefully a little grace, but they also allow you to be very flexible and decide what you want to do. And Dale, what do you want to be when you grow up? Let's keep asking people that regardless of their age, because if we dream a little, it's worth going after it.
Again, you've been absolutely fantastic on our chat today, Eric. But before we go, can you tell people how they can find out more about you?
Yes, if you visit brotmanmedia.com, you'll find all of our courses and books and workbooks and resources. And our company's website is bfgfa.com. And you can learn more about what we do. And we represent folks who are U.S. citizens only. So for your audience in Australia, we can't help you directly, but I certainly would love to hear from folks on social media or elsewhere.
Fantastic. And they should get your book, Don't Retire, Graduate. Eric Brotman, again, you've been a fantastic guest on Talking Wealth. You take care.
You too. Thanks, Dale.
For more information on our guest in today's episode, visit the link on screen right now. For more Talking Wealth, visit flix.net, click on the On Demand section, and then click on Talking Wealth under the Finance section. That's flixx.net. Or visit wealthwithin.com.au, where we have hundreds of informational videos, live shows, and Talking Wealth podcasts. Talking Wealth was voted number 3 in stock market podcasts globally in 2018 by FeedSpot. For more information on our courses, visit wealthwithin.com.au.